We have a two-part event today, and we have a panel now. I was talking about the topics we want to talk about. We have Johanna here. Hello, Johanna. How are you? She told me that she came directly from a prize presentation close to the Berlin Jazz Fest, which is the most important jazz festival in Germany. So thanks a lot that you come along in time. Wonderful to have you. We thought that we have around 40 to 50 minutes. And there are some topics who are on the table, I guess. How can we bring more women into the business? What are the principles? Who worked? Where are we now in the States and in Germany? How can we get more people in responsible positions, for example? Who's director where? Why are not that many women working as musicians comparable to men? There could be some reasons worth to discuss. And I'm so happy that we have a really incredible crowd of experts here around. I don't have to mention all of them, but I do it shortly. Kris Davis, thanks for being with us. Terri Lyne Carrington. Johanna, thanks for being with us. And Aja, you're moderating this event. I'm really looking forward, and I want to hand over to you.
I hope this is, oh yes, this is on. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aja Burrell Wood, and I'm the Managing Director for the Institute of Jazz and Gender Justice, founded by Terri Lyne Carrington, that we have right here, right next to me. In 2018, we're gonna be getting into some of that pretty soon. As I think everybody here knows, but I think it's great to restate. So the people that we have with us today, I'm really excited about the conversation. Also, thank you to the Goethe Institute for inviting us into this space. Also, so wonderful to hear all of our students at Jazz and Gender Justice. I just think we can just have another round of applause. Wonderful. Yes. And under the guidance and leadership of our Associate Director of Creative Development, Kris Davis. Yes.
Recording in progress.
Yay. So I think today we have a conversation where I honestly believe it's an embarrassment of riches almost that we have on panel, because along with their incredible multifaceted careers and achievements, I also think about Terri Lyne Carrington as a thought leader, a visionary. I think another word for Kris Davis is alchemist, completely. And Johanna, I'm getting to know in your work and all that you do, but you absolutely seem, from what I've looked through, this is a woman who speaks truth to power in your music and your activism. But I think what all of you have in common, other than, of course, being incredible jazz musicians and composers, is what we have on panel today are change agents and people in the world changing from whence they are planted, and always forging forward to create change and seek change, I think, for the benefit of us all. I'm also very excited in terms of the fact that this is, I think, inherently an intercultural, multicultural exchange. I am not, while I'm an ethnomusicologist, I am not a historian in jazz in Germany, for example. So I was trying to see what I could learn very quickly coming into this. But I thought I was really fascinated with it. It looks like, jazz was present, and jazz activity was present in Germany, I think, since the 1920s. It gets popular around there, and it is present throughout, before and after war still. So we're standing at about over 100 years of jazz presence in Germany alone. And any of you, if you are jazz fans, jazz musicians, or just enthusiasts, we know that while this is an American art form rooted in African American tradition, it has been already for decades a global phenomenon. So I think jazz is the perfect excuse and reason also to talk about things such as social change. And in this case, we're really dealing with gender equity specifically, but also for us at the Institute, that is, we always see gender equity and racial equity as our guiding principles and inextricably linked to each other. So I'm up for a riveting conversation. I hope you all, and if you don't mind, we'll get right into it. So I just wanted to start off just to kind of set the atmosphere, if you will, and I was hoping, Terri, if you can share a bit, a part of also why we are all gathered here today, in your why and how in founding the Institute, if you can kind of take us through that, why you saw that need and what had you inspired to make that happen and to set that change at that point in your life and career.
Thank you, Aja. It's such a pleasure to be here today, and I have to say I'm very proud of all of the students that played. Everybody sounded amazing. And yeah, it just does my heart good because it makes me feel like that's really what we're all about, the music. And so when the music sounds good, everything else kind of flows. So thank you. And this one. Okay. I just have to say that often, you're around greatness and you get used to it. And you don't realize, well, I don't say you won't realize, but, you don't keep reminding yourself, wow, this is not normal. And, let's not just take it for granted. So I just am amazement of Kris, most every time I hear her, but after playing with her as much as I have, to just sit and listen, I told her it was my attitude adjuster for the day. So maybe I can give up good wine and just listen to Kris instead. Anyway, as far as the Institute, I started because I just listened, opened my ears, my heart, my mind to other people and not looking at the world just through my own view. And that's how I sort of had been. Existing in the jazz world, but I started really hearing other, mostly women, saying they weren't having a great experience, and especially when I heard some young women through the name of their organization was I guess Women in Jazz Collective or Women in Jazz Organization, no collective at Berklee, and I went to a meeting and they were talking about things they were experiencing, and at first it just made me mad, and I wanted to go confront a few teachers, and then I thought, well, that's not really the way to handle this. Let's just create a space that some of these things maybe we can combat some of this kind of negativity that I was hearing about. And it's, just a place where people can come and be their authentic selves and not necessarily deal with all the burdens that they face generally. And it's amazing because a lot of students say that they hadn't been in an ensemble with other women before, which I find, mind-blowing actually, because even though I grew up with not playing, not having really any female peers for a very long time, eventually there were a few, people that I did play with. So just to have a space where you're not the only one is very important. But more importantly, it's not just Berklee, It's a real cultural shift that we're aiming for. So you have to start at home, of course. It has to start the institution you're involved with, and then try to create a ripple effect, just like everybody else that's doing this kind of work. It's not solo work; it's collective work, as Aja always says. And yeah, I see this change happening, and that's the best part. I see a cultural shift. I mean, of course, we have a long way to go, but I do see a little bit of a shift, change in thinking, an expansion of sorts among a lot of people. So, yeah, so a lot of the stuff we do outside of the school is kind of under the banner of the Jazz Without Patriarchy project. And, in school, yeah, we have ensembles and some classes. Aja teaches jazz, gender, and society. And, we have a weekly gathering. We have guest artists come on a pretty regular basis. And we have, extra lessons and, provide opportunities to play outside of school and to kind of do this work and share our thoughts about it. So that's the why. And I just want to say one last thing, actually, about the why. I was speaking to, we have a very esteemed advisory board, Dr. Angela Davis, Dr. Gina Dent, Dr. Farah Jasmine Griffin, and Carrie Mae Weems. And when I was speaking to Angela and Gina about starting this institute, and I didn't know what I was going to call it, they said, you have to, say gender justice, not equity or any other word. You have to say justice, because equity and equality can happen without changing the inequity and inequality that created it kind of in the first place. So justice actually implies a transformation. So that's why we use that word.
Thank you so much, Terri. And I think it's really interesting, too, speaking of that transformational work, because we do exist in a reality where we know that jazz has already transformed the world in many ways, right? And so what is that? What happens when we impact change in jazz, and like what would that look like? And you often pointing to the idea of jazz without patriarchy, as a project, and if you have followed our institute or look into it, you will often see kind of our, I hate to even call it a tagline, I definitely believe it's a paradigm and philosophy and ideology, the idea of jazz without patriarchy. And it's provocative because it hasn't existed without patriarchy. But Terri, if you can just take us a little bit through your thoughts about what jazz without patriarchy could be, or what drives you towards that. Maybe that's, yeah. I know, like utopia, but outside of that.
Wow, that's a big one. The first thing is that we don't know what it will be because we haven't experienced it yet. So all we can do is imagine, but that's sort of the beauty of, transforming things. Just like I was involved with a symposium visualizing abolition. And I realized it's this similar process. You have to visualize, things changing before they happen so that they can happen. I mean, so many things were just ideas, right, before they happened. Back in the 60s and the 50s, some of the, all of the civil rights work, somebody had to have an idea. Like, what if we do this? What if we try this? And then eventually some things happen, and then we look at it in its history. So that's why imagining something different, a different future, is extremely important. And eventually we hope that it just happens. And so that's kind of the idea behind that, to get other people, everybody thinking about what the music, the different possibilities in the music that we haven't seen yet, coming from other people, other bodies, other experiences, what it will sound like when there's more equity with the people that create it. I mean, yeah, we don't know, but I do know that what's happened so far, for the most part, all of the successful women, you know, most of the people that taught them and the people they idolize have been men. And the sound of the music has been created, you know, by men. So in essence, that's what we're simulating or emulating to be good. So if I were to get a gig, it would only be because I could sound as good as the next guy. But there was never any thought about what my femininity or any of that would bring to the music. It was a non-subject. I mean, you couldn't even think about that or talk about it. So I'm even trying to learn how to hear different, how to hear other people and not think, oh, yeah, they just need to, you know, hit harder. Or, you know, some of the stereotypical things are hypermasculinity that's embedded in the music. And it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that there's space for other things that we have to consider.
Just gonna have to take this, right? Thank you for that. And in terms of I want to go back to the idea of imagining something different than even the world you exist in. And we have an incredible person here with us in doing the work on the ground in Germany, and whose imagination I would love to get into, and that's Johanna. And Johanna, I would love to hear from you first, from a German perspective. What are some of the issues in...
People can come and be their authentic selves and not necessarily deal with all the burdens that they face generally. And it's amazing because a lot of students say that they hadn't been in an ensemble with other women before, which I find, you know, mind-blowing actually, because even though I grew up with not playing, you know, not having really any female peers for a very long time, eventually there were a few, you know, people that I did play with. So just to have a space where you're not the only one is very important. But more importantly, it's not just Berklee, it's a real cultural shift that we're aiming for. So you have to start at home, of course. It has to start the institution you're involved with, and then, you know, try to create a ripple effect just like everybody else that's doing this kind of work. It's not solo work, it's collective work, as Aja always says. And yeah, I see this change happening, and that's the best part. I see a cultural shift. I mean, of course, we have a long way to go, but I do see a little bit of a shift, change in thinking, an expansion of sorts among a lot of people. So, yeah, so a lot of the stuff we do outside of the school is kind of under the banner of the Jazz Without Patriarchy project. And you know, in school, yeah, we have ensembles and some classes. Aja teaches jazz, gender, and society. And, you know, we have a weekly gathering. We have guest artists come on a pretty regular basis. And we have, you know, extra lessons and, you know, provide opportunities to play outside of school and to kind of do this work and share our thoughts about it. So that's the why. And I just want to say one last thing actually about the why. I was speaking to, we have a very esteemed advisory board, Dr. Angela Davis, Dr. Gina Dent, Dr. Farah Jasmine Griffin, and Carrie Mae Weems. And when I was speaking to Angela and Gina about starting this institute, and I didn't know what I was going to call it, they said, you have to, you know, say gender justice, not equity or any other word. You have to say justice, because equity and equality can happen without changing the inequity and inequality that created it kind of in the first place. So justice actually implies a transformation. So that's why we use that word.
Thank you so much, Terry. And I think it's really interesting, too, speaking of that transformational work, because we do exist in a reality where we know that jazz has already transformed the world in many ways, right? And so what is that, what happens when we impact change in jazz, and like what would that look like? And you often pointing to the idea of jazz without patriarchy, you know, as a project, and if you have followed our institute or look into it, you will often see kind of our, I hate to even call it a tagline, I definitely believe it's a paradigm and philosophy and ideology, the idea of jazz without patriarchy. And it's provocative because it hasn't existed without patriarchy. But Terri, if you can just take us a little bit through your thoughts about what jazz without patriarchy could be, or what drives you towards that. Maybe that's, yeah. I know, like utopia, but outside of that.
Wow, that's a big one. The first thing is that we don't know what it will be because we haven't experienced it yet. So all we can do is imagine, but that's sort of the beauty of, you know, transforming things. Just like I was involved with a symposium visualizing abolition, and I realized it's this similar process. You know, you have to visualize, you know, things changing before they happen so that they can happen. I mean, so many things were just ideas, right, before they happened. You know, back in the 60s and the 50s, some of the, all of the civil rights work, somebody had to have an idea. Like, what if we do this? You know, what if we try this? And then eventually some things happen, and then we look at it in its history. So that's why imagining something different, a different future, is extremely important. And eventually, we hope that it just happens.
Been working on this for some years, and that's just higher ed. It's really exciting that, Johanna, what we don't, I don't think, have numbers here in the United States of just number of, you know, U.S. jazz musicians or U.S.-based jazz musicians and I'm interested in terms of like where they are in their career, what have you, what were some of those parameters. But I don't think we have that research yet that I've seen. Or the pay gap at all, yeah.
Yeah, Jody Melnick did also a study in Canada, and it was something like 260 jobs in jazz, and only, I think it was something very low, like 20 jobs went to women, but only 3 of them were full-time positions all across Canada. So that's worrisome as well. Yes,
because that impacts financial security. And Johanna, in terms of, so you gave us the data, which I think is really important also to kind of set baselines and also to see where you progress or not. But I'm wondering in terms of also the experiences of women identified or female identified people, jazz musicians in Germany, how do those numbers translate to literally the scene, to concerts, to festivals, to work environments?
Actually, yeah, one interesting thing is that that females can work in as a jazz musician, but they don't, and they even get paid like almost the same, but in the end they have way less jobs. I mean, especially, yeah, in their own field. Like they have some concerts, but not as jazz musicians, or they have jobs as music teachers, but not for jazz. So they are working in the field of music and making their money somehow, but not yeah, what they really want to do. And so it's not so easy. And if they are almost always the only one. That's what you said before. It's hard. And so they also, told me about, the experiences with discrimination, for example, I think we had this Aja in the we talked about it, that one compliment was like, oh, you play like a man. So this was the best you can say about the playing. And things like that happen a lot in Germany too. So what I did at the university was we had a meeting with all the female students in the jazz department, and we just met one evening and had dinner together, and we're trying to figure out something what we could do together to make us more visible. And so we created like a female collective. It's is
that the
Pang Jazz Collective. And for 8 years now, we are organizing a festival where we invite female band leaders only, or female also Flinter, do you say?
I'm not sure, but so Flinter, could someone help us out with that translation? Yes. Okay.
Female identified.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to know that. Thank you. And just before we move forward, though, could you share also a little bit? I'm so excited to have learned also about this jazz union and when that kind of started, the work that you're up to now.
Yes. Today we have a 50-year celebration of the German Jazz Union, and I also met the founders, and you will guess it were only men in the beginning. But right now we are on the board of the German Jazz Union. We are almost men. So we try a lot to make it like the same, and also today we gave away a big prize, like it's 15,000 euro what the winner got, and every year it's 1 year it's a female identified person, and the other year it's a male identified person. So even when female identified jazz musicians are only make only 30%, we have like this so it's this rule that it has to change every year.
One of the ways that you're trying to ensure equity happens, and I think we can very much appreciate that this is not science. There's not formulas to this, right? And then you're always trying to do your best. And I also appreciate too, a lot of times that jazz and gender justice people, I think, well, especially when we first started, it's like, oh, are you jazz for girls? Or, or we're only concerned with women in jazz, and it's absolutely not. We're thinking about the entire spectrum of gender and having inclusive, professional, educational work and creative environments for all. So it seems that you're up to that work as well there. And one of those sites, too, I wanted to maybe drill down a little bit into, because you brought up a site of education, which is a very critical site for change. And I wanted to also bring in my colleague Kris Davis to speak from an educator. I think you stand in, we all do in our own ways. If you've been an educator, you've been a student. That's how it works. So I was hoping that, Kris, you can talk to us from the perspective of, where did you see, as a student of jazz, coming up as a young person, really pursuing this, knowing this is what you want to do, where did you see, where did gender inequity pop up for you in education as a student? And then if you can bring us into now, in this time and space in your life as an educator, what are some of the things that you do or are up to in terms of impacting that for the better as an educator?
Well, I'm originally from Canada. I grew up in Calgary, and I went to school at the University of Toronto. And I went to a program that was very small. It had, I think, 60 students in total. So they'd let in 2 of each instrument. And actually, there was gender balance in that program, although all the teachers were all male. But for some reason, I didn't think about that at the time. It's just moving along, focused on the music. The thing I noticed, gender inequity, was going down to the jazz club, the Rex, where we would go to play, and all my teachers would go down and play, and we'd go to listen to them, and I started to learn more about their lives and who they were married to, and a lot of their partners were musicians or vocalists, and I could see that the men or the women, the wives, would hire the men and their friends, but then when it came to the male,
on the flip side,
when the males would, when the men would hire, side people in their projects, the women and the wives or partners were not invited into that space.
But still their friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I started to get to know these women a little better, and they were really frustrated by this. And I was going to finish school soon, and I thought, maybe this isn't for me, because I'm not going to be able to really pursue what I want to do in the music here and not be taken seriously. So I booked a flight to New York, and I moved to New York right after I finished school. And then I just started seeking out communities within New York that were open. I got into free improvisation, and the community in New York and Brooklyn was much more inclusive with gender, but also towards music, because it wasn't just about jazz. There were classical musicians that were improvisers. There were people coming from different traditions that were there to improvise and compose and collaborate. So that was really interesting to me, and I got deeply involved in that scene. And it's actually where I met Ingrid Laubrock, who's a wonderful German saxophonist. And I had played in many groups with mostly men up until that point. And I remember Ingrid moved to New York, and she was dating Tom Rainey, who's now her husband at the time. And she came down to a club, and Tom and another friend said, "Oh, you need to meet Ingrid, she's amazing, you should play." And in my mind, I thought, and I've told this story before, but I was like, oh, they want me to play with the girl. And I look back on that, and I go, oh my goodness, that was,
What we internalized.
Yeah, exactly. And so we started to play together, and I started playing with more women, with Mary Halverson, and it started to adjust to this sort of more women and less men, but still sort of gender balanced. And I saw the possibilities in having this more diverse setting, diverse group to collaborate and work with. And so that became part of my artistic practice, was to seek out people and, different people coming from different communities and see what was possible in the music. So now this is a long-winded way to go into jazz education, which is when Terri asked me to join the Institute. I was so excited by the fact that she wanted people of all genders along the gender spectrum to be part of this, because it was really about the work about gender and racial justice as a principle. And so anyone who cared about this subject and wanted to see change would be part of the Institute, which was really inspiring to me, because I had also had all these opportunities to be part of more women-led groups, or women-led camps, or only for women institutes and opportunities, and I always sort of avoided those because I didn't want my gender to be connected to my music.
Sounds like you were also avoiding being tokenized, which is also kind of an insane burden, to be someone who is marginalized and then also trying to avoid being marginalized at the same time.
Right, exactly. And we've talked a little bit about Mary Lou Williams, seen through the eyes of gender in music, and how her whole legacy is tied up in gender. And when I was younger, all I saw was the gender piece of it, and I thought, oh, I don't even want to, I don't want to be connected to this. So I didn't check out her music, I didn't do the research, and I just think about how unfortunate that is. Of course, now I know more, but it is sort of this, you and I have talked about this, but this ongoing process of like peeling the onion away to understand what's really happening under the surface.
Absolutely. And I think Terri had a comment. Thank you, Kris.
Yeah, I had not actually heard that story about Ingrid. And it's funny because the same thing happened to me when I came to teach at Berklee, which was 2005. And I came back from LA and they said, well, we want you to, it was like my first concert. It was the summer, the semester hadn't even started. And they went, well, we have this bass player. We want you to play with this female bass player. And I was like, no. And I was like, well, her name is Esperanza Spalding. And I was like, and? And I said, oh, okay. And of course, that forged a lifelong relationship, but I almost actually totally refused because I felt like the same thing, like they were just, wanting to see two women on stage. And of course, my thinking hadn't evolved either, but also I wonder how many other opportunities people miss with that kind of thinking of, like you said, the marginalized trying not to be marginalized. Or, it's really kind of complex how that happens, because most women I know that are good really didn't want to play with any other women because it just felt like, even Mary Lou Williams said it,
Yeah,
she said.
She did.
Yeah, she's like, why would I play with women? I play with the greatest men,
She was kind of comfortable, and at least even outwardly from interviews that we know in archives, that she would kind of this attitude of like, oh, I'm one of the boys. But then if you look at her writings, like in her own private journals and things, which we do have access to, a lot is at Rutgers. It's different. It's almost completely different from what she shared in media versus how she was feeling, but she also was very much projecting that and reasons. And I'm wondering, Johanna, as I was going to ask you, I was like, I see your hand going up. What are some of those things that are resonating with you as well in your experience as a jazz musician?
Absolutely, it's just what you, Terri and Kris told. We have those it's internalized discrimination as women as well. So we are always looking for the successful ones. We want to play with the best ones who have the gigs and who can make our own career bring forward. So this is of course it's absolutely nonsense, but this is how we are, what we learned, and we really need to relearn this. So this is something we have to build a community with other females. We have to trust on them that they will call us for a gig if we call them, and all these things. Mm-hmm. It's a thing we need to learn. And this is happening in Germany all the time. And also the thing that you're afraid to be the token one, or to be so to hang too much with the girls because you want to be one of the group. For example, in the big band, if there are in the WDR big band, there is only one female saxophone player. It's Carolina Strassmayer. And one for some time we had Shannon at least, but now it's only one again. And so in all the other radio big bands, we have no females at all in Germany. And so this is something. If you want to prove that you are just as good as the man, you have to hang with them, and you're trying to adapt as much as you can. And I think we have to learn that that's not the way. We have to empower each other and build a sisterhood. And I
just wanted to comment on that because I just left the Frankfurt Radio Big Band, NDR, and there were no women in the big band. And so then when I walked into the rehearsal, this was last week, and I walked into the rehearsal, I was like, oh, come on, y'all got to do better than this. Like, no women, really? Not one you could find? At least WDR has one, because I had just played with them earlier this year. And I said, okay, you guys have to do better. You have Carolina, but what else? And then you go to the Frankfurt and there's none. So, and then, of course, they said that they held auditions and only a couple of women came. And the ones that came, they just weren't strong enough. And they, so that's why, I was there playing music from the book. So they were, and they actually make a lot of efforts to have female composers and conductors, they said. But I think it goes to your question earlier when you introduced this panel about why there aren't more. And of course, it's, systemic in a sense, we have to change from the beginning. I mean, parents have to change. A lot of parents discourage their daughters to play music with the ideas about it. I mean, when you think back, when it all started, jazz was in brothels and places where your safety, back in the day when the music itself started, where your safety wasn't really guaranteed. Even if you go further back to just traveling, something I kind of learned more recently or thought about more recently. When slavery ended, and the big thing is you can now travel. Like before slavery ended, a black person couldn't travel. You couldn't go anywhere, right? So now you can travel, but who's safe to travel? Especially, back then, it was, it wasn't the MBTA or, I mean, who was safe to kind of be out there in the streets? Women weren't, especially back then, right? So you have very few women that would be able to go to the places that music happened. So parents, the history of it all, elementary and middle school teachers have to do better, much better, because what I find is so many of these teachers, they get rewarded in a sense, or the school is putting pressure on them to make sure their bands sound good and to get awards at these competitions. So they just pick what they think the best players are. So because that's the directive they're getting from the schools. And I mean, that's pretty shitty. I mean, is it really about education or is it about getting an award? Same thing, in high school, and then the same thing in colleges. So that system, that merit system and award system, I think really has to change. And I always say they're not really testing, or, they don't have a metric for how well you play the blues or your rhythmic connection to the music. So that's another problem. because you're being judged on things that aren't, to me, really the essence of the music in the first place. So there's a lot of problems as to why there aren't more women just going for it. And then it becomes not fun. And I know a lot of people that have had a lot of talent, not a lot, but I know some people that have had some talent that have just quit because it's just not fun. Why put yourself through this extra nonsense when you go do something else that's more fun for you?
Absolutely. And I think in this is just exemplary of why this is collective work, right? Because often we are asked, and Johanna, I'm sure you're asked a lot in your work, well, what is it? What is the reason? And people are looking for, not that you weren't saying, but people are often looking for like a very simplified answer or one reason or one culprit. And if it was that easy, like we would be done tomorrow. And we just like nailed it and no, there's no more patriarchy. But obviously, these are things that are system-wide, right? And we're talking about systemic issues. And one of the ways I wanted to make sure that we have enough time for, too, one of the ways that Terri Lyne Carrington, together with a whole community of composers, worked on a recent publication and project, which you heard a lot from today, which I think very much counts, and even in its short existence, I think has been impacting systemic change, and that is the new standards, the book, the lead sheets, lead sheets for 101 women compositions, or 101 compositions by women, excuse me. Yes, it got it all confluted, but you heard it. And it was well. It was done well. But I recall, and this is, in the initial Boston Globe article, if anyone ever read this, it was, I believe it was in there, but I was at the meeting with Terri, and I loved this moment where we had brought the idea to the press, to the editors, actually, to Berklee Press. And we're really excited about it. We know we have ideas about how it's going to go. And one of the editors says, well, are you going to have enough music?
Actually, he said, are there even 100 women composers?
There you go. And then Terri says, oh, we're going to make it 101. And I was like, I was keeping my professionalism, but I was like, yeah. Oh, now you really done it, And also, I'm just thinking, like, do you know women?
Just, volume 2.
Volume 2 is there was more than 100. So you got to come in today and hear it firsthand, all this wonderful music, and also you should know that it's intergenerational, it is international. It is, across races and ethnicities that are represented in all of the women in that book. But I wanted to see if, Terri, Kris, and I don't know if Johanna, if you've engaged with this publication, but if you want to share a little bit more about what that publication has meant, also having incorporated now into classrooms and.
Well, I think, for me, what have found is a lot of people are using it because they all say, oh, we've looked for compositions written by women and couldn't find any. And, I mean, that seems to be what everybody was saying. And it's kind of like you're doing the work for other people. You're providing a tool, but, I mean, the composers are there. They've been there. So it's kind of like how hard are you looking? And what have you done? So, okay, let me make it easier for you, which is, I think, kind of our job in a way, but I get tired of it. I mean, like people say, what should I do? I want to start this program. I want to, have more women at our school or in our program. What should I do? And I tend to say, you already know what to do. You don't have to ask me what to do. I had to figure it out, too. Once you decide that you want to do something different, you get on the internet, you read, you see what other people are doing, and we're kind of in this society where people just, I think are used to it being easier, but it's work. It takes a lot of work to have diversity when the field has been so uneven and unleveled for so long. it's work, and most people don't want to do it. So we did this book to make it a little easier, and yeah.
And she went on to record an album based on the book with also Kris Davis on it as well, and they had the nerve to win a Grammy this year also, y'all. But so that was really wonderful. But to hear this music in live and now, and I think it also challenges the concept of what is a standard and whose composition gets to be conferred that status, because that is another place that has been gendered in jazz history.
There's also a play on words. I think the idea is that we're trying to set new standards in general. I don't know that, standards may always be the songs that have been considered standards from early on, from the Broadway shows, Tin Pan Alley, and then the Wayne Shorter, and other songs that have crept through. But the idea is to just think differently.
And I'll also ask you, Johanna.
I was just going to say that, well, what you said is true about the curriculum. Like I travel to many different, work with students in different schools all over the world, and everyone is asking about this book and has incorporated it into their programs in some way. Even here in Boston, Bruno just played jazz on the Charles, and they wanted to focus on women composers in Boston, and many songs from the book were included. So it's becoming part of the curriculum, part of the jazz canon, which is very exciting. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, because there's a lot of Berklee folks here. A couple of years ago, before the book came out, we commissioned 10 women composers that are also in the book to create digital scores for the Berklee Library. So if you're looking for more scores from some of these women, please look their names up. It's also on our link to the JGJ Library website. There's some awesome pieces there. I use them all the time, but I don't know how many people know about them. So it's a good thing to know.
Oh, hopefully you guys can help us continue to get the word out. And Johanna, I would love to hear from you. I don't know if you've engaged with the publication or not, but if you have involved the compositions of women in the work that you're doing in the collective and just on the scene. Is she frozen again? Oh no. Let's, yes. Okay, all right. Just if you can last before we go to questions, thank you. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
I don't. Okay.
Yeah, I heard you. Of course, I heard a lot about your publication, and I'm so happy that you've done this work. So thank you very much. Many people, many musicians in Germany are playing this music from the book already, and so it does make an impact, and I think what we really need is role models. So it is important that young jazz musicians get the book, play this music, try to start their own composition. So it's first you need to see, as a young female jazz musician, you need to see that it's possible to do so, and that your music can be in a book like this in a few years and at a later point in your own career. So I think this is so important for everyone, international, like worldwide. So and then what you said, Terry, about people are telling us, there were no ones to find. It's just laziness. That's what I learned. Because it's the same with our festival. We do this curatorship for 7 years now, and our list is just, that long. I mean, we only do like 3 days festival once a year. It's a lot of work, and we are all jazz musicians, 7 jazz musicians who do it in their free time. We can't do more, but we would love to have like 5 days, 6 days, 10 days, and we could all fill it with amazing female jazz musicians. And every time we are making up the program, people ask us, yeah, how did you find them? And it's so hard. I would love to call a female jazz drummer, but are there any good ones at all? So all those questions are coming here as well. So yeah, I think we just need to do the work. We also, with the German Jazz Union, we are putting together lists, and we want to give them to everyone. So yeah, I think that is needed, so that we can say, here it is. Now you see they are there, and yeah, you can hire them.
Yep. Yes, and it's undeniable. Yeah, absolutely.
I played in the Berlin Jazz Festival last summer, and last November, and I was interviewed a few times, and the people that interviewed me asked me if we were going to do a second volume, and if we would include more European women, because there's not that many actually in this version of the book. And I know Terri has always hoped that there would be volume 2, but maybe volume 2 will be more Europe focused, and just putting that out there. As you said, the work continues. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to get to now. I'm hoping you have some really wonderful questions for us today, and also that I'm hoping also that we've named a lot of things, publications and music, and also things that are going on with our institutes and collectives, and that maybe we can make sure.
And volume 2.
Volume 2 is there was more than 100. So you got to come in today and hear it firsthand, all this wonderful music, and also you should know that it's intergenerational, it is international. It is, across races and ethnicities that are represented in all of the women in that book. But I wanted to see if, Terri, Kris, and I don't know if Johanna, if you've engaged with this publication, but if you want to share a little bit more about what that publication has meant, also having incorporated now into classrooms and.
Well, I think, for me, what have found is a lot of people are using it because they all say, oh, we've looked for compositions written by women and couldn't find any. And, I mean, that seems to be what everybody was saying. And it's kind of like you're doing the work for other people. You're providing a tool, but, I mean, the composers are there. They've been there. So it's kind of like how hard are you looking? And what have you done? So, okay, let me make it easier for you, which is, I think, kind of our job in a way, but I get tired of it. I mean, like people say, what should I do? I want to start this program. I want to, have more women at our school or in our program. What should I do? And I tend to say, you already know what to do. You don't have to ask me what to do. I had to figure it out, too. Once you decide that you want to do something different, you get on the internet, you read, you see what other people are doing, and we're kind of in this society where people just, I think are used to it being easier, but it's work. It takes a lot of work to have diversity when the field has been so uneven and unleveled for so long. It's work, and most people don't want to do it. So we did this book to make it a little easier, and
And she went on to record an album based on the book with also Kris Davis on it as well, and they had the nerve to win a Grammy this year also, y'all. But so that was really wonderful. But to hear this music in live and now, and I think it also challenges the concept of what is a standard and whose composition gets to be conferred that status, because that is another place that has been gendered in jazz history.
There's also a play on words. I think the idea is that we're trying to set new standards in general. I don't know that, standards may always be the songs that have been considered standards from early on, from the Broadway shows, Tin Pan Alley, and then the Wayne Shorter and, there's songs that have crept through, but the idea is to just think differently.
And I'll also ask you, Johanna.
I was just going to say that, well, what you said is true about the curriculum. Like I traveled to many work with students in different schools all over the world, and everyone is asking about this book and has incorporated it into their programs in some way. Even here in Boston, Bruno has played jazz on the Charles, and they wanted to focus on women composers in Boston, and many songs from the book were included. So it's becoming.
If you want to show them how to improvise, and you are going to a high school class, for example, and you say, okay, now you stand up and you play a solo, then the boys will stand up and play, but the girls might be better if you say, okay, now everyone is standing up and playing simultaneously. So this is how learning things works differently for boys and girls. So this is also something you have to think when you're planning how to educate the children, how to make them learn something. And right now it's not for everyone, because the teachers are mostly men, and so they teach them how they've been taught it.
Right. I think that's
this
a
is
good
one
point. Yeah, I think people always teach how they've been taught. I think that's an excellent point, and that's a problem. I mean, I don't think I became a better teacher until I stopped doing that, and not just how I've been taught, but how my own personality, how I learned. And so what's interesting about what you just said is still everybody's different. So all girls don't learn the same way, and all boys don't learn the same way. So to me, with your point, what also needs to happen is educating teachers on how to individualize more their lessons, and not generalize so much, because I definitely functioned more like a little boy. I mean, that's everything I did was like a little boy. So that's probably why I excelled as well. And I know there was a study once, and so I understand what you're saying, because there was a study once, and of course with studies, they're generalizing. They said if you throw a ball, a little girl's going to run away from the ball if you throw it. And a little boy's going to grab the ball and throw it. And I just thought that was really fascinating. I don't know who they studied, so they didn't study me. But I'm not sure who they studied, but if it was, if there's any truth to it, I understood, something at that point. So I do think that you have to individualize your practices with teaching different people.
And just to speak to that individualizing, I mean, you said more women, which is to teach, which is great. But also, I mean, we grew up mostly with men teachers, and we're both here. But I remember studying with Jim McNeely, and he could tell I went to his house, and I'm just kind of a shy person, and it takes me a second to get comfortable, and he could sense that about me, and so he left me in his studio, and he said, I'm gonna go make some coffee, I'll be back in a little bit. Well, of course he was gone, and there's the piano, so I just start playing and then forget where I am, and he's downstairs making coffee, all the meanwhile listening to me and finding out like what I'm interested in, and Exactly. But he could sense that I needed some space to get comfortable, and then he came back up and then was ready to share some ideas. So, I also think, like you said, just speaking to like the way that we teach and individualizing teaching is really important.
I think this is really great too, and I think there's also a way to consider, and this works across differently, but works across all cultures. And what are our norms surrounding gender and culture? You know, what are little boys and little girls being socialized to do, which might not necessarily mean what they are actually inclined or not inclined to do. We know that little boys will be more encouraged to be vocal, to be leaders, to stand out in front, where when a little girl does that, it could come with other types of consequences or pushback. So there's a part of that. There is a study, McKeague, in terms of jazz, to your point about, and this, it deals in like education, jazz education, and it is an older study, and we need more research. But that the attrition rate, you know, when we look at like middle school and girls interested in jazz and boys interested in jazz, and I want to also acknowledge we're being very binary in this discussion, but that, or just interested in like band music, but jazz, like it's almost equal across, right? And you get to high school, of course, anyone who's pursued music know that there's attrition anyway. A lot of people quit along the way, or more decide to go down different paths. But who decides to not continue is more so, you know, female students than male students, and going from middle school to high school, and then again, high school to college. And then again, even when you have these wonderful, amazing degrees, like from a college like ours, like Berklee, you might get into the field, understand that it's hostile or just something that, like what was previously shared, that it's not a direction you want to go in for many reasons. And so we're losing people along the way. But even before you get to college auditions, we've lost so many already. So how do we, you know, continue and make sure that it's, you know, equitable, all welcoming, inclusive, you know, to all. So that's kind of one of those issues. And the last thing I'd say to your question too, it's really easy for us to get into an idea when the ideas, or mentality, if you will, when the ideas of diversity come up and inclusion come up, immediately there tends to be this anxiety of like, but we can't lose quality, or we can't lose excellence. And I would like to challenge that dichotomy of thinking that we fundamentally understand when we deal with diversity that we're going to lose excellence or lose standards or lose qualities. And I'm going to tell you, history doesn't even bear that out. It's all there. The excellence is there. But as Dr. Sherry Tucker says, a really wonderful brilliant scholar in jazz and gender and others, we have to have bigger ears, and maybe we can start to press ourselves for widening our lens, widening our ears, because some of that is internalized thinking that's actually not true.
My question is about, you said something about how like a lot of the ways that we judge like what's good is based on like how men play. And so something I'm wondering, that I've been thinking about, is like something that I've found like really beautiful in learning jazz and in learning the trumpet is like feeling attached to the lineage and like feeling attached to studying the trumpet players, and which is all men, but I don't know, I love it. And so I guess my question is like how, this is more like I know there's no one answer, like how have you personally thought about like acknowledging the jazz tradition and like the lineage of your instrument and the music and being really attached to that, and then also like finding the space to be yourself?
Who would like to answer that?
Yeah, I think history is super important. We all have to have a grasp on what came before. So you have to study, I mean, I'm old school. You have to study the lineage, or what are we doing? I mean, that's just me. I mean, I don't think, you know, everybody teaches that. Actually, I've given up a little bit on teaching that way, because I've found that younger people often are not as, they don't feel the same way anymore. So I've given up a little bit on that, because I think, you know, you guys are on your own path, and so I always want to respect that. But I'm just happy to hear you say what you said about studying the lineage. But work that I think you have to do on your own. It's a journey that everybody takes, because it will take you different places. Of course, teachers can point you in different directions, And like everybody says, you can't be what you can't see. So we want to find examples of women. So I don't know, like, if you saw any women playing trumpet coming up, and probably not anybody that you probably wanted to go study if you did, which is, you know, really, really sad. But you're young enough that you should have actually known of Ingrid Jensen, at least. I'm sure there's more. But I think, like Aja was just saying, we have to, you know, have bigger ears to not just for the consumers or teachers, but ourselves. So when we're listening, we're taking in this wonderful lineage, but we're also hearing other possibilities that you will create. You know what I mean? So you have to have an inner voice that you follow that doesn't necessarily have to be connected to that lineage, even though it's important to know the lineage. And I'm up here talking about this, but Kris is probably the perfect person to talk about that, following your inner voice. And she also already mentioned that certain communities have had more women, were more open because of like improvisation, creative music, improvising communities that also include classical players or people that are not from this bebop, swing, bebop, you know, the tradition that we kind of know. So I think that is important as well, finding these other communities and listening. Like if you could hear somebody play that's not coming from that lineage, and it, you know, can help you find your own voice, and it can also be other people than that are in that real strong lineage that you're talking about.
Hi. When you mentioned collective work, I think that also involves like emotional and psyche work, like holistic kind of work, because for a system to socialize generations of people, there has to be like the internalized belief that the system is working and it's true and it's real, even if that means the death of someone's natural instincts, like for, you know, the concept that femininity is inherently weak or whatever, even if that means for someone who is male perceiving is feminine in nature, but, you know, is socialized otherwise. And so with that, for the people, I think you mentioned Professor Carrington, that are not working as hard to materialize, including women and gender nonconforming people, but they have the desire. Do you think, for everyone on the panel, do you think that it's an outside work that'll affect the inside, or does the inside work have to start first for there to be an outside?
I think we have a philosopher in the room. I love that. Johanna, do you want to respond, and then we'll go around the panel?
I'm not quite sure if I got everything of the question. Maybe you could, yeah, go on first and. I think if I can use, I think she's saying that, you know, acknowledging that internal change has to happen, and I think you're kind of asking a question about, is it the external that changes us, or us that change the external to move forward? Did I get that correct? Okay, Johanna, does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, both has to happen at the same time, and we can only change our perspective, but at the same time, it's not our fault, because the system, the structures, the systemic problems have to be resolved, and so I think, yeah, we can start with our own perception and our thinking about, yeah, our own work, how we receive our own yeah, progress and what we do, and how we see our friends, our female musician friends, yeah. So, and then, but it has to happen all at the same time. I think that's important. Yeah.
Kris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I agree with Johanna that it has to happen at the same time. It's kind of the chicken before the egg, egg before the chicken idea. But I do think you have to be open to receiving the information. So that happens in mysterious ways sometimes. And you never know what it is that's going to spark the changing of the way that you see something. So I think also just being exposed, being open to what comes to you is really important.
Yeah, there's a Buddhist principle that says that you want to be the person that this is something that I, have tried to believe, but you want to be a person that affects your environment opposed to the person that lets your environment affect you. So when I just look at various principles that I've followed in Buddhism, that one speaks to that, but it's also assuming that there's like this real inner strength, that the environment's, you're stronger than your environment. And I mean, that's kind of how I grew up thinking, and that worked for me, but I don't think that works for everybody. So one thing I do know is that this generation is saying, we're thinking about these things. We need naps. We need, breaks. We need, we need, I forget the terminology. I'm trying to think.
My son who's
They never had that one.
Yeah.
But
They're
it's
like blocked out on the calendar in the school calendar.
Mental Health Day. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. This is a whole nother time. So I think, you're asking that question is great, but I also think your generation has a different outlook on it because, especially like, we've talked about this before, but, as a black woman, we're taught we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. So I've just always had a strong work ethic to the point that now I'm thinking about, I don't want to have that anymore. I want to say no more. I want to let some things go. But, so you guys are inspiring in that way because you talk about this. We weren't talking about any of that. We just did it. And so sometimes because I have a teenager son, sometimes I get a little frustrated because, what do you mean you're just going to relax today? Like the whole day? I don't understand that. So keep asking those questions, but talk to each other and support each other with it. And also look to your elders, professors, teachers for a little different view as well. But you're going to do what you're going to do anyway.
Thank you. I think we have one last comment for Johanna before we close.
Yeah, one thing I didn't say because I thought it's obvious, but maybe, I should say that, of course, in Germany, we also are talking about intersectionalism. Like, it's you can't have feminism without also think about the intersectional
I think, yes, I think Johanna was pointing towards the intersectionality in terms of identities, which could include gender, race, sexuality, class, and more, and also very much impact not only how we see the world, but how we move through it. Did I get that correct? Okay, thank you, she's back. Well, thank you, everybody, again. Many, many thanks to the Goethe Institute and to our incredible panelists, Johanna Schneider, Kris Davis, and Terri Lyne Carrington. And we look forward to being in community with all of you more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this fantastic panel. We had only 60 minutes, but I think we deep dive deeply into this topic. We have this recording. We're gonna put it on our website, and you can spread the word afterwards. I want to thanks to the wonderful musicians who are still here. I want to thank you to this fantastic panel and to the Goethe team, of course, Annette, Shaya, and Smilla, and Trevor, who did the sound. We worked 2 years on this afternoon, and it was worth, so to say. Please feel free to stay a little bit, have a glass of wine, I don't know, water? No wine? Water. Oh, we have students here, yeah.